Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to make a video today titled Why I Am Rooting Against the Imperialist Forces on this upcoming war. World War III, call it whatever you want. I would argue it's already happening. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time studying some of the geopolitics of the unfolding situation in our world, and yeah, I've just as a U.S. citizen, I've reached the conclusion that I don't want anything to do with it. I'm like, yeah, this is not my war. This government is not my government. Israel is not a country that I support. I'm not one of these. Unfortunately for me, as a believer and as a follower of the teachings of Christ, I feel rather alone in my anti-imperialist outlooks, because unfortunately most followers of so-called Christians, most so-called Christians in the United States are vehemently in support of these wars. You know, electing politicians that ship bombs off to the other side of the world so that they can be dropped on little kids. It's completely satanic, and I want to use this channel as a platform, even if it doesn't reach very many people. I want to do whatever I can to try to nudge the ways of the world in a different direction. You know, I think that in general, I would say that we have more influence than we realize as humans. I think the forces of darkness and the forces of evil want us to think that we don't actually have very much influence, that our voice doesn't really matter. But the way that we choose to live our lives and what we choose to stand for, what we choose to believe in, what we choose to throw our weight behind, it does matter. It does make a difference. It might not make a very massive difference, in the sense of, like, it might not seem to us like we're really influencing very much. But the reality is, like, from the higher perspective, the spiritual perspective of, like, just looking down over the entirety of the human experience and the human collective, from that perspective, what we do actually matters a lot. It really does. And yeah, like, with that in mind, I bring forth this video where I just want to share and substantiate some of what I see going on in the world, because I understand that, you know, people live very busy lives. We're all busy. We all have burdens and obligations to meet. We've got bills to pay. We've got mouths to feed. I'm subject to all of those things myself. So, you know, I'm also caught up in that struggle as well of making ends meet and figuring out how do we get by in this world? How do we build healthy and prosperous families and communities? How do we keep people cohesive and working together towards common causes that are good and life affirming and valid and just? So I spend some amounts of my life wrapped up in the riddle of being human and figuring out how do we not just survive, but hopefully thrive a little bit as well. And pick others up and really try to construct and participate in the building of a world that is one that we want our children to live in. And it's not easy. This is not an easy task. If you're a parent, you probably, and you feel a similar calling as I do, you probably would agree that it's not especially straightforward or simple. It's a bit hard. We're in this fallen world. I look at things through the biblical perspective, and the biblical perspective teaches that this world is not really our home. This is a fallen world that essentially, through the original sin of man, darkness was invited into this world. And so now we live in this world that is inhabited by forces of darkness alongside us. And even there are forces of darkness that can be even within us. We can be a part of the problem, is what I'm trying to say. When I look around the world today, I think that a lot of people who are supposed to be a part of the solution are a part of the problem. Usually in a lot of cases, they are not really intending to be a part of the problem. It's just kind of the nature of the world that we live in. Our world is very systematized. We live in a system, a financial system, a military system, a system of nation states that require us to have passports in order to move around. It's a matrix. It's a beast system, I would say. When I say beast system, what I'm saying is that it's a world system. This world belongs to fallen spirits and dark forces for the most part. The Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth, which to me, what that means to me is that ultimately it is the children of God that will be the inheritors of this earth, and we will oversee and manage this earth along with Christ. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that the world that we're living in today is this world that the meek have inherited. I don't think that those days have come. I think the world that we're getting instead is one filled with darkness and satanic deceptions. And these deceptions have permeated our lives so much that it's like a fish doesn't realize it's swimming in water. I don't think the sort of average human in 2024 even realizes or can fully appreciate how much satanic darkness, deceptions, war, disease, destruction, anti-life agendas, campaigns to destroy rather than create life. These are things that are unfolding all around us, and we've just gotten kind of desensitized to it. We're generally quite powerless as a species in terms of how we perceive ourselves in our own reality. For the most part, people tend to kind of feel like that they're just sort of powerless. Life just kind of is what it is, and we just kind of got to go along with it and just shuffle our feet and move along and just kind of go through the motions of being human. And this is a reasonably disempowered state, I would say, in general. I have a little pimple on my nose, by the way. Some of y'all, if you're still watching, maybe you notice. I look like Rudolph. It's okay though. But basically, I'm getting at something here. We're circling and spiraling our way into the core of what I want to speak on here. Which is really that what the world needs today is people who are awake, conscientious, followers of Christ who can speak out on behalf of living virtues that are life-affirming and not virtues that are rooted in death, disease, warfare, destruction. As followers of Christ, we want to speak into a world that is promoting life, growth, health, wellness, happiness, connectivity, love, sacredness, cleanliness, godliness, happiness, virtues that are warm and coming from the heart and flowing up and bubbling up over into the world, like a geyser. We want to be bringing this heart-centered energy that creates safe and supportive spaces in the world for children to exist and to grow up. We want to create good, loving, positive energy in the world. And I don't know that what I want to say is that it would be nice if more people were convicted that of the urgency of doing this. This is an urgent situation that we're living in. What's happening instead is that the world is kind of marching off of the cliff. The world is going into the broad path of destruction. That's what it says in the Bible. It talks about, the masses, so to speak, will just sort of march as a herd, off of the cliff into the abyss. And that's what we're seeing today. One could argue that this is kind of like always what is happening if we want to get kind of like abstract or spiritual with it. But just to stay more concrete and grounded, what's happening today is that the world, in particular, I would argue the West being US, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Um, yeah, that more or less covers it, I guess, in terms of defining the West. The West is effectively, not entirely, but for the most part, kind of like sleepwalking. It's really like it's lost its way, and there's no more like moral compass or like guiding principles anymore. Like perhaps I'm not totally convinced of this, but I would say like perhaps there have been periods in history where the West like had like some kind of like succinct like clear like moral like virtue that it was standing for. These are nations that are founded ostensibly on Christian principles. Um, and so Christian principles or Christian virtues have been present in Western societies to some extent throughout most of history. Today, I would say that these Christian virtues have been um, eroded away at or compromised or defeated, arguably even, such that what we see today, what I see today, I'll speak my own perspective, is that the West is something of like this kind of like I'm getting the image of like a monolithic like giant, and it's like it's stumbling into its own demise. You know, it's like this massive, unfathomably large entity that um, has been so dominant and so powerful and so awe-inspiring and has done so much, but it's kind of like nearing its demise at this point in time. Maybe it's already even past the point of no return. Um, and this entity, this monolithic like giant that we could call like the West, or call it like US hegemony, or call it the empire, or call it whatever you want. It's like this entity, perhaps, again, I'm not sold on this, but perhaps it has had like really strong, like redeeming, like virtues to it throughout its lifespan, but it's kind of getting into a part of its lifespan now where it's like, what is redeemable about it? You know, is any of this redeemable really, or has it been completely compromised and taken over by satanic forces of darkness? Is it doomed and headed for death and destruction? And you know, it seems to me that it might be. You know, it seems to me that it might be. How that is actually going to play out, or what that's exactly going to look like, I can't really say for sure. We can have some kind of like slow demise or slow decline into mediocrity, and I would argue that we've been on that slow decline into mediocrity for quite a long time. Or it could be something more dramatic, but perhaps apocalyptic, something more intense or sudden. Um, I don't know. You know, I don't know what the next 30 or 40 years are going to look like on this planet, or in my own personal life. Like it's I'm interested to find out. But in general, like I would say I'm pretty pessimistic. I'm pretty pessimistic. And I say that because there's not a lot that is inspiring optimism in me these days. Um, in terms of observing geopolitics, the West is backing satanic wars. The West is supporting and providing bombs for the slaughtering of innocent children. The West is, the West specifically being the United States, is supporting a genocidal regime in the Middle East. And it seems to have absolutely no intention of applying the brakes to that regime. There are many off-roads to like some kind of peace in this situation of like, yeah, maybe we've gone far enough. Like maybe, like, you know, in the last year since Hamas attacked Israel, you know, there's been a incredibly strong spirit of retaliation that has been sort of like given full permission to just be unleashed to its maximum potential. And what we're seeing today is that the time to have maybe kind of like tapped the brakes on that retaliatory spirit was like 11 months ago. Okay, like we're way in deep into a satanic. It's a satanic. It's like a black hole has opened on this planet, and that black hole is like pulling us into it and sucking our soul, our very souls, like the soul of humanity, the soul of our communities, our country, our lives, our nation, our family, the soul of all of this that has been built up over the centuries. And we've made it to this place of unbelievable technological advancement and power and wealth and status, and kind of like all of it is being potentially destroyed, potentially pulled into a portal of satanic death and destruction. There seems to be no stopping this. There seems to be no turning back. This is something I've spent a lot of time studying and thinking about and wondering, like, I'm a follower of Christ, so I believe in the command to love thy neighbor as thyself. What stops an entity that is committing massacre against its neighbors? This is an antichrist entity with the backing of the strongest military in the history of the world. What brings a stop to that? What, like, Muslims, Islamic states in the Middle East, are they what brings a stop to it? We're probably gonna be about to find out if it can, or if it will, or if it does. It sure does look to me like the thing that might stop this is it's not gonna be, it's the thing that is gonna stop what I'm discussing here is not going to be the US or the West in general coming to its senses and realizing that forces of darkness have hijacked and have taken over the spirit of our governments and our countries and our people. It doesn't look to me like the solution is going to come from the West, which has been very much a source of the problem in this situation at this moment in time. So then it's like, okay, well, where is the solution going to come from then? Will it come from the world? Will it come from actors within the world? Islamic nations, perhaps with the backing of Russia, perhaps with the backing of China, is there going to be some type of equilibrium that gets established? Can there be some kind of new pathway forward that features peace, that features compromise, that features ceasefire, that features new agreements being made where human rights are upheld and established, where certain peoples who have been bombed and ethnically cleansed for decades are able to live in peace and reconstitute themselves and their lives, and that we can all make our way forward into some kind of better reality in the future. Is there going to be a sort of like world-based outcome that allows for that to happen? Or are we in a situation where we're screwed and we need a supernatural outcome, which could be the return of Christ, the return of the Messiah, some kind of unfathomable, like miraculous, supernatural experience? Is that really kind of like our only hope? In other words, are we kind of like, are we doomed unless and until some kind of massive divine intervention takes place, unlike anything we've ever really seen before? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I have no idea how any of this plays out, or how any of this, I know there are biblical prophecies. I know that, the prophecies would suggest that this is all like end times apocalyptic, like it has to happen in order for these prophecies to be fulfilled type of a thing. I personally see a trap in that way of looking at it, because when you look at it like that, you end up becoming a warmonger. You end up becoming one of these evangelical Christians that is fully supporting the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of the neighbors of supposedly God's chosen people, which I don't believe that that's what they are. But these people who are supposedly God's chosen people are committing war crimes against their neighbors. And evangelical Christians who want the end of the world to be ushered into this reality are supporting these demonic satanic wars. I don't think that this is how Christ was calling us to live. I never got that message from Christ and his teachings. Maybe someone you can drop in the comments like a Bible verse where Christ tells us that we should enthusiastically support these wars. Maybe these wars are inevitable. Maybe what's playing out in the world is just inevitable and it is just going to happen no matter what. But if that's true, we still have free will and freedom and sovereignty as believers, as followers in Christ, to speak out against satanic evil that's being perpetrated in the world. And so if people are ethnically cleansing and raping and bombing and destroying, and it's the steal, kill, and destroy regimen with the full backing of Washington. If the steal, kill, and destroy regime is getting away with murder, we don't have to be happy about that, guys. We don't have to celebrate that. We don't have to support it. We don't have to stick our heads in the sand and just say oh, well, what can we do? What can we do? It's just biblical prophecy coming to life, and there's no choice that we have except just to shrug our shoulders and stick our hands in the air and be oh, well, I guess, there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to kind of just go along with it. I reject that idea with every fiber of my being. I think it's ridiculous. I think the wars that Christians are supporting today are putting themselves in spiritual danger. I think that, it talks about in the Bible, and I've talked about this in one of my more recent videos, how people are, it talks about how people come to Jesus and are look at all these amazing things that we did in your name, we healed the sick, we cast out demons, all in your name, and that he's going to say to them, depart from me, I never knew you. Now, why would he do that, right? That's a very confusing teaching. Okay, we've got people who were spreading the gospel, casting out demons in Jesus' name, and he's going to rebuke them and reject them? This doesn't make any sense. So let's think about this a little deeper. Who are these people? Who are these people that he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you, to? And I think it's the modern day evangelical Pharisees. It's these people who are going around with this mask of look at me, I'm such a good Christian, and I'm out here, I'm helping out at the soup kitchen, or I'm doing the Lord's will. Not to knock helping out at soup kitchens at all. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that there are people walking around in this world with a mentality that they are good Christians who are doing God's will in the world, who are eventually going to be told by the Messiah himself, depart from me, I never knew you. And so we've got to try to understand this. How could it be the case that it's it's implied in this teaching that there are people who are living with a certain misunderstanding. They are misunderstood. They're going to get to the pearly gates and say, look at me, look at what a good Christian I was. And Jesus is going to say, no, get away from me, I never knew you. So those people then must be misunderstood, right? They must be living in a misunderstanding, thinking that they're doing it right, thinking that they're living God's command on our lives, but in reality, in their hearts, in terms of the contents of their hearts and their overall heart posture towards life, is actually missing the mark. It's not what Christ had in mind. And to me, my hypothesis is that it is the masses, the religious masses, the religious Christian masses who have lots of feathers in their cap and think that they're these great Christians, but Christ is going to say, what did you do for the least among us? What did you do for innocent children being victimized by imperialist weaponry? Did you speak out against it? Did you take a stand? Did your heart weep for what's going on in the world? Did you cry? And did you pray for all of these satanic genocides to stop on this planet? Were you deeply troubled by the ways of the world all the way up till the very end? Or were you just kind of going right along with it, and just like, yeah, this is fine, this is fine. I'm okay with all of this. It says in the Bible that they're God's chosen people, and that, all of these things must happen for these end times prophecies to be fulfilled. And so I'm okay with everything that is happening. I'm okay with it. It's okay. Oh, our government, my government that I have voting rights in and a passport from, is sending bombs to be dropped on civilians. And I'm okay with it. It's okay. I don't really see a problem here. I'm going to go to the polls next month, and I'm going to vote for candidate A or candidate B. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm not really sure, but it's going to be candidate A or candidate B, both of whom are going to perpetuate this very satanic problem that I'm talking about in the first place. I think it's these people, which is to say all of us, the masses, the Christian masses, who are going to be subjected to having fallen short and not having made it. We thought we were saved. We thought we'd do a little sinner's prayer and show up every Sunday and we're good in God's eyes. And I just don't think that Christ is that small-minded. I think that Christ is universal and powerful and fierce, and he demands truth and accuracy and justice. He wants people whose hearts are on fire for love and peace and health and happiness and goodness and wellness. And I don't think he's finding it in this so-called modern day body of believers. There are a few, of course. There's always a remnant. And that remnant is probably a little bit larger than I myself realize. I'm willing to acknowledge that as well. But I think in general, the Babylonian religious system that helps people sanitize their own reputation of themselves in their own minds, this ideology of as long as we do what is expected of us, we pay our taxes, we vote, we go to work, we go to church, we donate to the poor, as long as we just live these lives where we're just kind of checking all the boxes and doing everything that we think that we're supposed to do, I think that what we're going to find at some point is that is not getting the job done. And we're living in the age now where the opportunity is available to realize that it's just not getting the job done. We're not getting good, healthy, wholesome, virtuous, life-affirming outcomes on this planet behaving in the ways that we have just kind of been programmed to behave. And so something's got to give. Something has to change. Something has to shift. Somehow, some way, we have to wake up and realize that Satan is real, darkness is real, evil is real. It's alive and it's well on this planet. The forces of evil are having a good run so far, let's say this decade, dating back to we could just keep dating it back further and further and saying that they've been having a good run for a long time. But just look at what's happened just in this decade. with some of the things we lived through with the pandemic, and now what's going on with these unjust satanic wars that are being fought really against the will of the people. Like, who, nobody like nobody wants the US to like strategically help Israel bomb Iran, and yet that's what they're doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are wars being fought by criminals who are running amok while the people are suffering, but the people are like impotent and powerless. The people have practically been destroyed, like, not entirely, thank God, but by and large, like, the people are just asleep at the wheel, man. Just totally pacified and anesthetized with all of this entertainment and scrolling nonsense. Like, we're like 99% of people out there are just like, they haven't got a freaking clue, honestly. And that's kind of honestly why I make these videos, is because I feel that there's something that is redeemable in humanity. Humans can be redeemed. I've been redeemed. I've been redeemed in Christ. There's other people out there who have been redeemed in Christ or want to be redeemed in Christ, who have redeeming qualities within them. And I kind of like, I make these videos to try to speak to what is redeemable within humanity, so that people like, come on, y'all, like, we got to kind of get with it here a little bit. Like, this sort of like surrendering our lives over to like big daddy beast system, big daddy government, big daddy entertainment, big daddy corporate media, big daddy US military, whatever it is, like, we have to stop. We have to stop like looking at these giant like monolithic entities as like our the source from which we feed from. Like, it's really bad. It's really, 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 really bad what this beast world system, world government, violent military cartel, propaganda generating system is doing. It's like, there's people being freaking slaughtered. Like, you and I are lucky enough not to have to worry if a freaking like US bomb is going to drop on our heads right now. But there's people in the world who don't have that luxury. Like, they're like, their whole lives have been taken away from them, and they live in a state of just constant moment to moment survival, being terrorized by the forces of imperialism that evangelicals in the US are just fully backing and fully supporting. Like, it's a crying shame. It's a crying shame. It really, really, really is. And we each have some responsibility to see it for what it is, at the very least. At the very, very, very least, see it for what it is. That's step one. If after seeing it for what it is, you can start to like make actions or decisions in your life that are informed by seeing life and seeing the world for what it is, which is to say, what is it? It's a series of deceptions, ultimately. Like, it's all like kind of like a big demonic like magic trick that's being like performed to kind of keep you like hypnotized in this spell where you will kind of just give over your consent and give over your life to satanic criminality. If we can at least just see that that's what's happening, that'll give us a little bit of a foothold into some kind of other world, some kind of other timeline. I'm not going to make any promises to you that it's going to be some wonderful timeline. It could result in your being martyred, as has happened to countless thousands of humans all throughout the world history. People have been martyred for standing up to this, and we have to get over our fears of something like that happening to us as well. The type of courage that Christ lived with was one where he understood that the consequences were as severe as facing physical death in exchange for standing up against the forces of evil. And if we're true followers of Christ, we have to accept that the stakes are equally as high for us. And we don't get to hide behind religion. We don't get to hide behind our church group and just pretend like, don't mind me, don't mind little old me. Like, um, I'm just going along, just doing everything that society expects of me, and putting no skin in the game, putting nothing at risk. That's just not. It hasn't been getting the job done, and it will not ever get the job done. Like, there's a saying of the tree of liberty must occasionally be watered by the blood of rebels. I forget the exact quote, but the idea is like, if you like nice things, if you like freedom, happiness, wealth, wholesomeness, good virtues, like if you like these things, you have to be willing to die for those things, which means you have to stand for something in the first place, and you have to be willing to put skin in the game in the first place in order to help generate and open up the sorts of timelines in the future that we want to be living in. And right now, the only kind of timelines that are really open and active in our world are satanic timelines, like demonic timelines. Like it's not good, it really is not good. And so we have to say no to these satanic portals that are these black holes that are like opening up on our planet and sucking in our lives, sucking in our families, sucking in our communities. We have to rebuke and reject that stuff, and say like, nuh-uh, like not around me, not with my life, not with my family. You ain't gonna do that with my consent. And this is risky, this is a dangerous path. And yet we've got God on our side. And yet, do you think God is going to let a single hair on our head get messed with if it's against his will? Anyone who takes up a sword against us, shall they not prosper, right? Like, our enemies and their weaponry shall not prosper against us. So, yeah, we need to live with more courage. That's all I'm really trying to say on this video. I try to live by my own advice here to the best of my ability. It's a journey, it's a process, it's hard. There's ways in which I'm not as courageous as I would like to be, and I have to keep continuously iterating into the process of leaning into being more courageous, leaning into speaking truth, leaning into posting a video like this for public consumption, which carries with it some amount of risk on my life, and just saying, yes, I accept it and I move forward, and I will continue to seek truth, seek love, seek peace, seek goodness, seek the true virtues that Christ stood for, stands for, and represents in this world, even if it means that I might not get to hold on to my own life for as long as I would like to. Those who cling to their life will lose it, and those who are effectively not willing to lose their life, then they will find life, then they will claim life, they will have truth, they will have God walking with them in this life. And the stakes are no less high than that. So I pray that this inspired you. I pray that you will shake off the cobwebs of deceptions that are running rampant in the world. Our minds, for the most part, have been filled and occupied and taken over by so many lies and distortions and deceptions and agendas. And we've just been getting bombarded with satanic lies, and it's time we shake it off, like get it off of us, and be like, I'm ready to live life with a clear set of eyes, oriented towards the truth, oriented towards love and health and happiness and goodness and strength, strong, healthy, prosperous, free nations filled with people who are prospering and surviving and thriving, not filled with people who are struggling and being slaughtered and destroyed by their own freaking government that has just been taken over by Satan. Like, let's just call it what it is. Like, we don't need to mince words anymore. Like, these Western governments, the leaders within the West, specifically the US, like, these people are not our friends. These are not people who we ought to be feeling good about representing us, like, no. It's muy no bueno, as they would say here in Costa Rica. So, yeah, I guess I'm just going to leave it there for now. Could I say more? Probably I could, but hopefully if you've watched this whole thing, you've kind of gotten the message by now. I'm just here to inspire people, okay? Let me just part with these words. Like, my only intention is really like, if I can get 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 or 1,000 people to be like, yeah, like what he said, like that's what gets me going. I just want to see us doing better as a people, as a species, as a country, as a community, as a nation. I just want to see us realizing that we're in a war, and that it's a war for our souls, it's a war for our hearts, it's a war for our minds, it's a war for our families, and like we ain't gonna like emerge victorious out of this war by just sitting back and like medicating ourselves. Like, although there might be a time and place for that here or there, I get it. We all got to do what we got to do to make it through this life, and yet at the same time, like, what we ought to want to do most of all is to get ourselves together and stand up and fight and put up a good fight, and go down. If we're going to go down at all, go down fighting, knowing that we tried. We really stood for something that matters in this life, rather than just kind of shuffling our feet and sleepwalking along with all the rest of the world into the abyss, which is what most people are doing today. I pray this inspired you. I pray this served you. I pray that this message only led you closer to the truth and closer to God. That's my only intention. God bless you. Click like, click subscribe. Keep fighting the good fight. Fight the good fight. Period. Take care.